In this video, we are going to explore Dateland, Arizona, and the sites of two World War II era Army camps in the area, Camp Horn and Camp Hyder. Created in the 1920s, Dateland's location between Sentinel and Yuma, Arizona, made it a perfect road stop on Highway 80. They would advertise their date shakes for miles in each direction, which is something they still do today on Interstate 8. If you pull off the freeway at Dateland, Arizona, you'll most likely be stopping at the Dateland Travel Center, which is where the date shakes are located and is also pretty much the only place to stop in Dateland. When you first enter, there are dates you can sample, and of course, plenty of dates to purchase as well. There's also a gift shop, and there is a convenience store in the travel center as well that is fairly well stocked with assorted things to eat and drink. There is also a Pizza Hut in the travel center as well. However, I did not film that part of it. And probably the reason most people would stop there are the date shakes. And the date shakes did get a seal of approval. And then right behind the travel center, there are a large number of palm trees that kind of make it look like an oasis in the desert. There are several plaques in front of the travel center that gives information on the area's military history. There's a plaque honoring the 12 crew members who died in a B-50 bomber explosion in 1950, a plaque for Dateland Airfield, and one talking about Camp Hyder and Camp Horn. First, we'll visit the site of Camp Horn, which is about 10 miles north of Dateland. While most of the road from Dateland to Camp Horn is paved, the last little bit of drive is on a dirt road that follows parallel to the train tracks. At the location where the entrance to Camp Horn was, there is a monument to the 81st Infantry Division and the names of the soldiers who died in training at Camp Horn. The 81st Infantry Division trained at Camp Horn in 1943 and was later sent to the Pacific Theater of Operations during World War II, where they fought in Palau and Peleliu, among other battles. Later, the 104th Infantry Division trained at Camp Horn before being sent to Europe. Here's a picture of Camp Horn while it was active, and here it is today. The train tracks that would supply the camps are still visible, but you can tell they have not been used in quite some time. Next, we're going to head about 14 miles to the east to Camp Hyder, which actually has a lot more of it still standing. There are actually quite a few buildings still standing at Camp Hyder, including some barracks, the flagpole, even latrines. In 1943, the 77th Infantry trained at Camp Hyder, and then later shipped off to the Pacific, where they took part in the battles of Guam and Okinawa, among others. They were then followed by the 104th Infantry, which also trained at Camp Horn. While both Camp Horn and Camp Hyder were part of the Desert Training Center, which also included camps in California and other parts of Arizona, the reason that none of the divisions that trained there actually ever went to the desert to fight afterwards is because of the Germans were defeated in North Africa in May of 1943. So with no desert warfare going on, the divisions were sent where they were needed. Also, with the Germans' defeat in North Africa in 1943, the Army decided the camps weren't needed at all and were shut down in April of 1944. Here's a look inside the main building. You can still see wallpaper, and there is some furniture inside, but I'm not sure if it's original. The wooden buildings here would have been officers' quarters, with the enlisted men living in tents, and the stone buildings were the latrines. And here's a look inside. The sinks and toilets are still in place. It's definitely a really cool place to kind of get a glimpse of what life would have been like for the soldiers training there during World War II. Unlike Camp Horn, however, there are no monuments or markers at Camp Hyder. The remains of Camp Hyder is on private property as well. It is amazing that these buildings are still here after nearly 80 years. Just south of Camp Hyder, we made one more unscheduled stop at the Agua Caliente Pioneer Cemetery. By the 1850s, there was a stagecoach station in the area, and by 1873, King Woolsey opened a ranch nearby. Heading into the cemetery, there was a large number of unmarked graves. The oldest marked grave I saw was from 1880. There were also some fairly recent graves as well. And this concludes our exploration of the Dateland area. There's definitely more to check out than just some date shakes. Well, thank you for watching. Please give it a thumbs up if you enjoyed the video. Consider subscribing, and we'll see you next week.